Subject this morning, what happens after death? I seem to pick the good subject, at least the difficult ones. What happens after death? No one ever came back to tell any of us. But still, there are certain things which we can know about what goes on after death. What happens after death? The first thing we must remember, it depends. It depends on your state of consciousness at the time of shedding this physical vehicle and passing on to another realm. Remember what happens after death for you. And that is really the only thing with which you are concerned is your own consciousness. What happens to that depends on whether you are a developed or an undeveloped soul. And on that depends your consciousness after you are through with this earthly existence. Realize that. And so as I give you the classifications of the different states of consciousness after we are through with this realm, perhaps you can place yourselves in the correct category. And then after that we will draw a few conclusions. Now the first thing is this. Where do we start from? What do we have to start with? The eternal spirit which is in each and every one of us. The soul is attached to the three bodies, the physical of which we are very conscious. The physical, the spiritual, and the causal body. And so, when we leave this physical body behind, made up of the 16 elements, when we leave that behind, what is left? What goes on? The spiritual and the causal body. Now, it is what we know of those two bodies that will determine our consciousness after this life is over. What we are conscious of, what we have made dynamic to our consciousness about the spiritual and the causal body is what we will have after we are through with this existence and nothing else. You cannot get something out of nothing, and you will not have any consciousness when you're through with this vehicle unless you have it now in this life. And that's why the Master came, to give us self-realization, that we would have the ways and the means to be conscious of the spiritual body within us, the real part of us, and the causal body, and that we would realize that the physical body is simply the life force of the spiritual body condensed, frozen into this seemingly real thing, the physical body. And so we start with that. When we are through here, we will have the spiritual body, and in that the causal body. And so we must know something about those things. And we must know it right here on this plane. Because we will not be able to know it unless we know it now. Have the starting point, have the foundation of spiritual consciousness while we are here in this earth. And so let us go on now to a classification of beings or spirits after death. Because each one of us is going to be one of those spirits and one of those beings. We're not going to escape. We can't. So let us face it and see where we're going to find ourselves. Now there are two classes of people after death. Those who are developed and those who are undeveloped. That's all. Either you are or you are not. Either you know or you do not know the spiritual consciousness within you. And so remember the two main classifications, the developed souls, the developed spirits, and the undeveloped ones. Now, who are the developed spirits? Who are they? Well, I'm sure that they're all of us. They are yogis, saints, and devotees. Now, if you're a devotee of God, you are in that class of developed souls because you have some consciousness of the spiritual body. Yogis, saints, and devotees are in the first class. Now, on those yogis, saints, and devotees, there are three divisions. What are they? Well, you get it in life, You get it in all sorts of things, in the arts and sciences, in business, in sports. You have the best ball players. You have the medium type, and then you have just the mediocre ones, the indifferent ones. So you have the best yogis, the medium type yogis who meditate quite a bit. Then you have the indifferent yogis who just do enough to get by. Yogis, saints, and devotees. And the three classes of those are the best, the middle, and as the Master used to say, the indifferent yogis. They are wise enough to know they've got to do it, so they do it. And they get by. They will be conscious after death. But the Lord likes those who are full of zeal and spirit. And so remember, there you have the classification of, just in a general way, I'll come to the definite classification in a moment, of the developed souls, or those of us who will be conscious after death. Now, going on to the next class, the undeveloped souls, what are they? What are the undeveloped souls? All the rest. All the others besides those three yogis, saints, and devotees. They are ordinary human beings. And they are made up of moralists, ethical people, good people, but not necessarily religious. Then they are made up of the worldly people. And then the wicked people. And finally those who have amounted to so little that they take their own life, or the suicides. So there you have a wonderful classification of those who are going to exist after death in these two classes. Remember, the developed, that's all. The developed souls and the undeveloped. Those who have made it their business to know a little something about the spiritual body and about God within them and His great light and His love, and those who have not. So there you have the two great classes of souls after death. Where are you in there? Think it over as I go along. Perhaps you can place yourself definitely. And so that brings us along to this. What are the characteristics of developed souls who are conscious after death? What are the characteristics? Well, there are certain general characteristics. They are these: that the developed souls after death have different degrees of self-consciousness. That's the first thing. They have different degrees of self-consciousness. Some are fully awake, as I will point out in just a moment. But they all have a degree of self-consciousness. Next, they all know that they exist in the spiritual world, or in the world of spirit. You will all know that you exist. And finally, all, no matter whether you're just an indifferent yogi just getting by, you will have the consciousness of the Holy Ghost, the holy vibration, the Om vibration. So there are the general characteristics of the developed souls after death. They all will have a degree of self-realization or soul consciousness. But all will know that they are existing on the spiritual realm. And finally, all will be conscious of the Om. And now on the undeveloped, very few, as I will point out, will know that they are existing on the other side. And very few, once in a while, will have the consciousness of the Om vibration. So there are the general characteristics, especially of the developed souls. Remember, they will have a degree of self-realization, a degree of self-consciousness, just like you know you exist now. You will know that after death, to a degree. You also will have the consciousness of the holy vibration. All will have that. All yogis, saints, and devotees will have that consciousness, that they are one with that holy vibration, and that they are above pain and sorrow, the dualities of outward consciousness. They will know that they exist on the other side. Now, that degree of self-consciousness is another thing. Some of the greatest yogis will know and be fully conscious of passing through death, of life on the other side, and of passing into the mother's body and being born again. That's the highest. That's the highest state of consciousness of the greatest yogi. They will know, passing through death, know the life beyond. They will know when they are in the mother's body, and they will be conscious of birth. Now the next class are those who know, who pass through death consciously, are conscious on the other side, and perhaps conscious in the mother's body. But they are not conscious of being born. And then we take the next step this way. They are conscious through death, conscious beyond death, once in a while conscious in the mother's body, but not after that. And finally, there are those who know that they exist on the other side. So there you have these specific characteristics of the developed soul. Where are you in that category? Think it out. If you're not where you want to be, get busy. Follow the Master. Follow his techniques. You can have the highest if you make the effort and God's grace comes. Now, going on just a little bit about as to the undeveloped souls. Who are they? Undeveloped souls after death. Who are they? Moralists. Ordinary worldly people, wicked people, and those who commit suicide. There you have, that's the full classification. Now there's one point to bring out about the moralists or the very ethical people. They are good people. They may be thoroughly honest, upright, but there's one thing they did not do. That's why they seldom, or once in a while, have consciousness after death. It is this, that they did not adhere to the first and greatest commandment. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy strength and with all thy soul and with all thy heart. They did not know God. Now you can be the greatest moralist and the best person according to those standards, but unless you make it your business to know God, know him in a real way, you will not be conscious of him after death. Now going on, worldly people. 1 in 1,000, according to the Master's classification, 1 in 1,000 are conscious after death. How it happened, I don't know, because what do worldly people do? Oh, they probably have brought it over from a previous incarnation. But in this incarnation, they were concerned with worldly things. How can they know spiritual things? That's the reason. So once in a while, 1 in 1,000 will be conscious after death. Now, of wicked people, I think you know the answer. And the answer is, how can they know spiritual things when they are so attached to worldly consciousness that they are wicked all the time, living in sensation and being bound to worldly consciousness? How can they know spiritual things? It's impossible. So they do not have consciousness after death. And finally, those who commit suicide, their sorrow is so great, they can think of nothing else. Naturally, they do not have consciousness after death. So there you have the classification. It is one of the greatest classifications. It was given by the Master, and you will find it contains each and every one of us, or each and every human being, in that classification. Now going on just a little bit, let us draw a few conclusions here at this point. The question of whether you will be conscious on the other side resolves to this. There are those who know. There are those who know they are there. And there are those who know they do not know they are there. That's all. You cannot be conscious of a thing or a place, can you, unless you know it? You cannot be conscious of this room unless you're in here. I mean in ordinary standards. Of course, if you have the omniscience of God, you can see right through the walls and all those things. But from ordinary standards, you cannot be conscious of a place or a thing unless you know it. And so, those on the other side who know they are there are those who know they are there, and there are those who do not know. That's all. That's the real classification, the developed souls and the undeveloped souls. It is a matter of experience. Once you know, realize this, once you know, it can never be taken away from you. Once you know a spiritual consciousness within you, the presence of God within you, the great light of his presence, his love, the Holy Ghost, the holy vibration, Know that. Merge in it. Be in that once. No one can ever take it away with you. That's what it means when Jesus said, once overcome death and it can never touch you again. Isn't it worthwhile to follow the Master in self-realization, to attain that? If you can attain the breathless state through the techniques, the highest technique of concentration plus the highest technique of meditation, Hong Sau and Om technique, commonly known, if you can attain the state of consciousness where you are without breath, fully conscious, death can never touch you again. You have overcome death. So it is worthwhile doing that. And especially if you practice Kriya Yoga, you can do it. If you can attain the breathless state, then you know that you will be fully awake when you pass from this worldly existence, throw off this vehicle, and enter into the spiritual realm of God. Jesus said, remember, once overcome death, and it can never touch you again. Do it. Why not? You can do it with the Master's techniques. You can do it. That's immortality. You have it right with you. You will not have it unless you do it right here in this life. Now, I have one or two Bible references which I always like to give because the eternal truths are there. And first, Revelation, the 14th chapter, the 13th verse. Listen carefully. Blessed are they, or rather, blessed are the dead which die in the Lord. Lord is Christ consciousness. Blessed are they who attain Christ consciousness and are dead to outward consciousness. That's all. Words of Jesus. And then it goes on. And their works do follow them. First it says, and that they may rest from their labors. But this is the point. And their works do follow them. If you attain it in this life, you will have it after death. You will not have it unless you do that. Is that clear? You must know it now. But if you know it now, you will have it after death, as it says in the Scriptures. And their works do follow them. Also from the Bible, Revelation, the 2nd chapter, the 10th and 11th verses, and these are most wonderful. First, be thou faithful unto death. Be thou faithful unto death. Pass through death once, and it will not trouble you again. Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life. Be faithful through the experience of death, which you can do right in this body now in a conscious way. Then you will have the experience of life eternal, the Christ consciousness within you. And finally, he that overcometh shall not be hurt of the second death. So there you have in our own Bible testimony as to what happens after death. Now going on just a bit, the Master gives the key. The Master gives the key to our attaining consciousness after death. And it is this: those who try by devotional yogic methods, which simply means the practices of self-realization fellowship technique. Those who try by devotional yogic methods to understand and perceive the phenomena of sleep and death, that is, in a conscious way, during their conscious physical existence, it is they who retain their consciousness after death. So there you have the Master's own words. That's why I have read them. Those who try by devotional yogic methods, the methods of self-realization, to understand and perceive the phenomena of sleep and death in a conscious way. When you reach the breathless state, you are practicing conscious death. That's all. When you do your techniques, and especially Kriya Yoga, you reach the state, the breathless state, you are consciously, if we can say that, dead. You are practicing the phenomena of conscious death. Now this can be done. Many of the disciples do it. And when you do that, you have overcome death right then and now. It can never touch you again. And you will know, when you reach that breathless state, that death will never touch you. You will know that, because you will be without breath, fully alive in the light of Christ, and you'll know that that is eternal consciousness. And so the Master has given us the wonderful key. And St. Paul said, I protest, by the rejoicing I have in Christ, I die daily. I declare, by the bliss I feel, of Christ consciousness, I overcome worldly consciousness and die to it daily. Isn't that wonderful? That's what self-realization is. That's what we must do. The Master's given the key. Let us realize that. And so, in conclusion, I'd like just to say that if you are in one of the following classes of people, you will have more or less consciousness in heaven. Yogis, saints, devotees, and occasionally worldly people. Sounds like the income tax. If you come in this following class, this is it. I've just been working on mine a little bit. Thank goodness I don't have a big one. But if you are in any of these classes, as I have said, yogis, I know, most of you here are devotees, I know that. Yogis, saints, and devotees, and some occasional worldly people, you will have consciousness after death. Now, an important point is this, the realization, and this is very important, the realization or the depth of your realization of Christ consciousness here on earth determines the length of time and the depth of your consciousness after death. If you meditate regularly and attain the state of that consciousness beyond the body, presence of God in you, and you go deep within it, you will have consciousness after death for a longer period than you will as if you just are an ordinary practitioner of the techniques of self-realization fellowship. You can see if you have a depth of your meditation and realization, you will have that until you are born again, and you will be conscious through the stages of death, after death, in the mother, and birth. But remember, all will be conscious of the Om, and all will know that they exist in the spiritual realm. And St. Paul said, I die daily. If you practice daily, regular meditation, and consciously die to this outward consciousness, you, without question, will have consciousness after death. And you will know that you exist, and you will be able to progress after death. It is the consciousness that gives us the power to advance. In this life, it is our consciousness to perform independent action that takes us ahead. It is your ability to consciously meditate more and deeper, isn't it? That gives you more realization. Now, on the other side, it is the same thing. It is your ability, having self-consciousness, to go ahead through independent action on the other side that will advance you. And so it is very important that in this life we carry out the Master's admonitions and practice devotional yogic methods. If we do that, then when death comes, we will be used to it, and it will not concern us. And so, finally, the ordinary restless soul, when death comes, what happens? Due to the organic disturbance of death, you stop and think. How would you feel? You can't breathe. You can't feel. You feel the senses departing. Can you keep calm under those conditions? If you can, you will be conscious through the paroxysms of death. The ordinary restless individual cannot do that. And what happens? When the organic disturbance comes, then he loses his calmness and becomes engulfed, overwhelmed by the organic disturbance of death. You see how clearly the Master puts it. It's a case of keeping your calmness through every condition. And death, of course, is the worst because most people do not know what's coming. And so when they feel the breath does not come, when they feel the senses do not function, and the organs are ceasing to work, can they remain calm? No. They're overwhelmed by it. And what happens? They lose their consciousness. Their consciousness is not carried through the state of death. On the other hand, those devotees who regularly practice these yogic techniques they learn to consciously perceive the organic change of death. They learn to consciously go through the state of death. The breathless state means there is no breath. And when the breath stops, the heart has already stopped, therefore sensation is cut off. And so the devotee knows that state in a conscious way. And what happens? He is not disturbed. He does not lose his consciousness. He has learned to control the prana of his body, the life force. And when he has stopped the internal workings and the withdrawal of the life force from the involuntary nerves has taken place, then he knows the state of conscious death. What can disturb him? Nothing. He's used to it. He knows it. And so remember, in closing, if you want to know what happens after death, you have to know that state right here and now in this life. You have to be able to consciously pass through the state, and then no force under heaven can disturb you. As the Master has said, you stand unshaken through the crash of breaking worlds. Why? Because you know that one eternal consciousness which is not disturbed by any phenomena, even the phenomena of death. Now, isn't that wonderful? We have right within our hands the ways and the means to overcome the greatest darkness, that of death. The Master came to give to each and every one of us the ways and the means to consciously know death, to take away the sting of death, and to be able to consciously live as we are here in the next plane. And in that plane, beyond death, is the great light and the great love of the infinite Father. There's nothing will touch that. His light is spread all over, and that light is vibrating with his omniscient love. That's what's after death. It is not necessarily darkness unless you want it to be. It is not necessarily uncertainty. It is not fear. On the other side is the same God's light that is right with us now. If you want it, it's up to you. God has sent you the ways and the means by sending you the channel of the beloved Master, who expressed so wonderfully the great love of God. And that love of God is the greatest power in the universe. That love of God can cure all sicknesses, heal all minds, and take away the ignorance of all souls. That's what's after death. Don't keep your mind on those dark things of unconsciousness. Right now, know the one eternal Father who is with us. He is our Father. We are his children. That's our birthright, oneness with the Master of the universe, our common Father.